White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders out here on the North Lawn. Thanks for being here.
Great to be with you.
You know, the push has been that this is going to be about unity, about reaching across the aisle. It's been a pretty contentious few weeks. How is that going to go over?
Look, I think that's what the American people want. They like it best when government functions and that elected leaders can come together and find solutions. We know we can do it because we've done it, even in the last several months. If you just look at criminal justice reform, I think is a perfect example of Democrats and Republicans seeing a problem, working together to find a solution, and the president led that effort. We can do that again, and there are a number of fronts that we agree on, and the president's going to lay out that case tonight. We can either choose greatness or we can choose to continue fighting with one another, and we're very hopeful that Democrats will want to choose greatness and work with this president to actually get something done.
As you all were out talking about unity and comedy and deals, the president tweeted, I see Schumer is already criticizing my State of the Union speech, even though he hasn't seen it yet. He's just upset that he didn't win the Senate after spending a fortune like he thought he would. Too bad we weren't given more credit for Senate win by the media. And Chuck Schumer responded, thanks for watching my speech, but you must have missed this line. Even more empty than his policy promises are President Trump's calls each year for unity. I mean, that doesn't sound like a great setup to a unity speech.
Look, I don't think it's lost on anyone that we have had a contentious last several weeks. I think the point that the president will make tonight is when we work together, we can do great things. And we have a choice to make. We can either work together and fix big problems that America is facing, or we can ignore them and do nothing.
So you're talking
and regardless,
infrastructure.
I'm talking a lot of things, whether it's infrastructure, even immigration. There are places where we disagree, but there are more places where we're on the same page than there are some of those minor disagreements that I think we can come to a place where, you know, maybe we get some of those things worked out. There are a number of places on health care, like lowering drug pricing, that everybody can agree is a good thing for all Americans. There are a lot of places like that we should look for the common ground versus fighting with one another.
You know, State of the Union addresses traditionally are shopping lists for presidents. They want to, this is what they want to get done. They tell a story about what they did get done and what they're looking for. Give somebody a little at home, a little behind the scenes of how this all comes together. You have all the departments kind of wanting to get their part in, right? How does that break down?
There are way more good ideas than you could ever have time to address in the State of the Union. The biggest thing is taking what the most important priorities are for the president. He's been outlining what those look like to the team for several weeks and building out and putting those building blocks together. And you're going to see, certainly, like you said, you'll hear some of the accomplishments that have happened over the last 2 years, but then you'll also see the look forward. This State of the Union is very much going to be about looking forward, a visionary speech of the great things that we can do in this country.
Also talking about the things that have been done, one of the things the president had talked about is ISIS and defeating ISIS. From his first speech, second speech to Congress, now we heard from the commander of CENTCOM today. Take a listen to this back and forth.
I am proud to report that the coalition to defeat ISIS has liberated very close to 100% of the territory just recently held by these killers. We've wiped out ISIS in Iraq. We've wiped out ISIS.
We do have to keep pressure on this network. They have the capability of coming back together if we don't.
General, were you aware of the president's intention to order the withdrawal of our troops from Syria before that was publicly announced?
I was not aware of the specific that announcement.
You weren't consulted before that decision was announced?
We were not. I was not consulted.
First of all, a lot of people were struck by that. That's the head of CENTCOM, not knowing that troop announcement was going to happen.
Look, General Mattis was fully aware, as was the president's national security advisor and the Secretary of State, other players that are key players in that process. They were all aware and briefed on the situation. And frankly, anybody that wasn't aware that was what the president wanted hasn't been paying attention. The president's been talking about this since he started on the campaign trail 3 years ago. This isn't not something new for this president. He's been talking about the fact he wanted to destroy ISIS and bring our troops home, and that's what we've done. Now, he's also said, and he's been very clear, that if there is even a peep of coming back, we will be fully prepared to make sure that doesn't happen.
And when the Iraqis push back on this big base that's going to watch over Iran and be a lily pad through the region, what does the president say?
Look, the president has met with the folks on the ground when we were in Iraq just about a month ago, and they were very clear that they're in a good position to be leaders in that region, and we fully anticipate that they'll continue to do that.
You know, the president seems to enjoy these big moments. What is his mindset going into this tonight, and as he's dealing with a lot of different balls in the air?
The president's got an incredible story to tell. He's excited to tell it. He's had an incredible and historic first 2 years in office, and the economy has not been as good as it is in decades. Wages are rising. Unemployment is down. The military is being completely rebuilt. There have been a number of foreign policy wins under this president, trade policies being renegotiated. He's got a great story to tell, but he's also still got a lot of things he'd like to get done, and I think you're going to hear that tonight. He's going to do what I think is going to be a powerful speech. He's in a great mood, and he feels good about going into the night.
Is he encouraged about the conference committee, and is he going to push to avoid another government shutdown?
Certainly, we don't want a government shutdown. We've said that since the beginning of this process. We didn't want the first one, but the president wants border security, and he's going to do what it takes to get it because he knows that his biggest and most important duty as President of the United States is to protect the American people, and he's going to continue pushing forward and make sure that happens.
Sarah, we appreciate the time.
It's great to be with you.
Thank you.
Ahead of tonight's address, I sat down exclusively with the Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell, to get his thoughts on what should happen tonight, what he's looking for. Watch. Senator Schumer said that he thinks that the State of the Union, as far as the administration is concerned, is in chaos.
The state of the Trump administration is embroiled in chaos and incompetence. In sum, the state of our union is in need of drastic repair.
What do you say the State of the Union is?
I think my friend Chuck Schumer is not paying close attention. I mean, the country is in the middle of an economic boom. Unemployment is the lowest it's been in 50 years. People are finding work who couldn't before, obviously. More money in your take-home pay these days. America's doing really quite well.
You said earlier today that you are praying for the conferees to come to some kind of agreement that will avert a shutdown. Do you think, how optimistic are you that that's going to happen?
Well, I'm certainly hopeful that nothing good comes out of a government shutdown. We've tried this a few times in the past. This wasn't the first time we've had a shutdown. One of my favorite old Kentucky sayings is there's no education in the second kick of a mule. A third kick of a mule would be even less educating. And so I'm hoping the president will be able to sign the bill. Conferees are working hard.
Do you think they're getting anywhere?
Well, they're working hard to try to find a place here that, you know, most of my party, virtually all of us, support the wall. We think the president's got a credible argument. Clearly, there are strong differences of opinion about that. I hope they'll split the difference somehow in the conference, make it possible for the president to sign the bill, prevent another government shutdown, and I know he's contemplating another option.
Yeah, so I want to ask you about that, but he didn't sound too optimistic about the conferees. He said, you know, if they come back with something that doesn't include a wall, I think it's a big waste of time.
Well, it could be, but my point is, by signing that bill, he will fund the remaining 25% of the government, I mean, beyond just the wall. And he's got another option he's contemplating that may get the result that he wants on the wall.
That would be a national emergency, are you? But you're not in favor of that, are you?
Well, I want to wait and see what he does. All I've said to him is that there is a process where the Congress, you know, could try to undo that. That doesn't necessarily mean that's an argument for not doing it, but it won't be without controversy.
But there's already been, Senator Blunt and Senator Cornyn have both said that they don't want him to go down that route. Senator Graham says he hopes that no matter what comes of this, that the GOP will stand together in support of the president. So which do you think it will be?
I think there are different opinions about it. And if he goes that route, we'll just hash it out.
So how do you think all this ends? Because you just laid out two different examples where, they don't get the funding for the wall in the deal that they come up with, but the national emergency is likely to be rejected by a lot of members of the Republican Party.
But the president could win anyway by vetoing the bill and then trying to get enough votes to sustain it. So he may ultimately be able to prevail on the national emergency alternative. What I told him, just in giving him situational awareness, is, as you have stated, there's differences of opinion among Senate Republicans about whether that's the right thing to do.
Do you think that what's going on at the border is a national crisis, is an emergency for the country?
I think it's a huge problem. I think the president is correct that fencing makes a difference. That's one of the reasons the conferees on the bill are bringing in professionals, not political appointees, professionals who do border security tomorrow to ask their advice about what works. I'm pretty optimistic they're going to say that fencing in certain places really works.
Back in January of last year, the president said in the State of the Union in 2018 that he hoped that would be the Congress that would come up with immigration reform and border security and all of that. And shortly after that, he sat down at something called the Cheeseburger Summit with Senator Schumer, and they had discussions about 1.8 million DACA recipients being able to stay in the country, a path to citizenship, $25 billion for the wall. Should he have passed that deal? Should they have settled on that?
I think it's safe to say that neither side has been able to figure out how to pass something significant in this whole field. So what the president's done is fall back here largely on trying to secure the border, something he thought and we thought would not be that controversial.
Do you think that he should lay out a new offer tonight to the American people that includes the Dreamers, includes DACA?
Well, I'm not going to give him any advice tonight, but the fact that we're having a difficult time with immigration is not anything new, unfortunately. So I wish we'd just focus on securing the border and worry about the rest of it later.
That sounds like he's going to have to go the national emergency route then. That's what I'm hearing, that he would have to go the national emergency route if he wants to get the wall built.
That's an option he's weighing. He's been talking about it publicly.
In terms of Syria and endless wars, which the president has spoken about, you drafted a bill that opposed the pullout that the president has suggested. Why did you feel the need to do that?
Well, first of all, I don't think we're in endless wars. We've been in Germany since World War II, Japan since World War II, Korea since the Korean War. Sometimes American presence overseas in troubled areas or areas that used to be troubled is very important. The troops that were pulled out of Iraq, in my view, by President Obama prematurely led to the rise of ISIS, sort of another version of al-Qaeda. We don't want to make that mistake in Afghanistan, and we don't want to leave the Kurds to be slaughtered, our great allies, in eastern Syria. So in this area, I don't think we've been involved in endless wars. We're there because they attacked us on 9/11, and we're trying to prevent that again. It's better to deal with them over there than to have to deal with them here.
Your colleague Rand Paul says that you and others are supporters of forever war, and the president has said we've spent $500 billion on this mission. He said, the Soviet Union, became Russia over sinking money and life and loss of life into Afghanistan, and he feels that that's a lesson that we all should learn from.
Yeah, well, the loss of life with these forward deployments now is very limited. It's designed to protect us from getting hit here at home. Remember the carnage associated with 9/11. How much did that cost, the aftermath of that, not only in lives, but in costs, financial costs in rebuilding. Look, we can fight them over there or we can fight them here. I prefer over there. And we've done this in a way in which we're providing counterterrorism and training. The lion's share of the fighting has been going on. It's not being done by us. In Syria, it was done largely by the Kurds. In Afghanistan, largely by the Afghan National Army. We're just sort of backing them up with our special expertise.
Quick couple questions on Senate politics before I let you go. The discussion that you had with Mike Pompeo, the Secretary of State, you would like to see him become the senator from Kansas, or that was what you suggested?
I'd sure like for him to think about it. Kansas had a very late filing date. Mike's doing a great job as Secretary of State. I don't see any particular urgency for him to leave that job. The president's obviously happy with him being Secretary of State. At some point, he might decide he wants a different job, and I wanted him to know we'd all be behind him if he did. And
was he receptive?
Well, you'll have to ask him about that.
I did ask him about it. He said he's happy where he is right now.
Yeah, he hadn't. I think that's something to consider down the road. There's no urgency for him to make that decision, and we'll see what happens.
How about you? Are you running in 2020?
I am.
All right. Senator McConnell, thank you very much. Good to speak with you today.